Excuse me, I'd love to make a donation to tonight's fund.
A black woman in a simple dress. A charity gala in Charlotte. Grant Holloway, billionaire CEO, looked at her hand like it was garbage. He barely touched it, then wiped his palm slowly down his jacket, twice.
God, that's revolting.
He turned to his circle.
Someone sanitize where she touched and get her out. She's contaminating the room.
A woman in pearls laughed. A man aimed his phone and started filming. Another guest wrinkled her nose and stepped back. Security walked over without being called. Nobody said a word. 300 people just watched. But not one soul in that ballroom had any idea what was about to happen. The woman they just threw out like trash was going to make every last one of them beg. Let me take you back. 12 hours before that gala. Before the humiliation. Before the cameras. Before everything changed. Breonna Taylor woke up at 5:15 in the morning. Same time she had woken up every day for the last 22 years. No alarm. Her body just knew. Her townhome sat on a quiet street in Charlotte's no-da neighborhood. Nothing flashy. 3 bedrooms. A small garden out back with tomatoes and basil she grew herself. The kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon oatmeal. If you walked in, you would never guess this woman was worth $4 billion. Breonna stood at the counter in a faded Howard University sweatshirt, scrolling through her tablet. Financial reports, market projections, a term sheet for the biggest private equity deal in Charlotte's history. $2 billion. That was the number sitting on her desk. $2 billion. Ready to be invested into a massive mixed-use development project called the Colton District. The project belonged to Pinnacle Development Group. The CEO of Pinnacle was a man named Grant Holloway. Breonna had never met him in person, not once. The entire deal had been built through lawyers, intermediaries, and conference calls. Grant knew an investment firm called Apex Horizon Capital was backing his project. He did not know that Apex Horizon's founder and CEO was a black woman who grew up in public housing in Baltimore. And Breonna wanted to keep it that way, at least for one more night. Her phone buzzed. Desiree Moore, her chief of staff, her closest friend, her sharpest weapon. "You're really going through with this?" Desiree's voice was half amused, half worried. "I need to see who he is," Breonna said. "Not the boardroom version, the real one." "And if the real one is exactly what the rumors say?" "Then we save ourselves $2 billion. There had been whispers, nothing confirmed, nothing on record, but enough. Former employees mentioned a culture of discomfort at Pinnacle. People of color who were passed over. Contracts pulled from minority-owned firms for vague reasons. A pattern that never quite made it into a headline. Breonna did not invest based on whispers. She invested based on evidence. Tonight, she would collect her own. The Charlotte Housing Foundation Gala was the biggest charity event of the fall season. 400 guests, black tie. The kind of night where old money shook hands with new money and everyone pretended they cared about affordable housing. Breonna had donated $5 million to the foundation, quietly, anonymously. She declined the VIP nameplate. She asked the organizers not to mention her name from the stage. "Just put me on the general guest list," she told them. "Nothing special." Desiree thought this was insane. "You're giving them $5 million and sitting in the back like an intern?" Breonna smiled. "I want to see how they treat someone who doesn't come with a title." Now let me tell you about the other side of this story. Grant Holloway lived in a world made of marble and mirrors. His estate in Myers Park had 7 bedrooms, a wine cellar, and a circular driveway that could hold 12 cars. He drove a Bentley Continental. He wore watches that cost more than most people's houses. On paper, he was Charlotte royalty. Pinnacle Development Group had built shopping centers, luxury condos, and office towers across the Carolinas. Grant's face had been on the cover of Southeast Business Journal 3 times. But behind that cover, the empire was bleeding. Pinnacle was over-leveraged. The Colton District project was 2 years behind schedule and hundreds of millions over budget. Without outside capital, serious outside capital, the whole thing would collapse. And if it collapsed, Grant's reputation went with it. The Apex Horizon deal was his lifeline. $2 billion would save everything. Grant arrived at the Monarch Hotel at 6:45 that evening. Chauffeured Bentley, navy suit, pocket square folded to a razor's edge. He stepped out and shook hands with the mayor on the red carpet. Flashbulbs popped. He laughed his big boardroom laugh, the one that said, "I own this room and everyone in it." Inside the grand atrium ballroom, crystal chandeliers hung from 40-foot ceilings. A string quartet played Vivaldi. The silent auction featured a Tuscan villa and a vintage Porsche. Waitstaff circled with champagne and crab cakes on silver trays. Grant moved through the crowd like a king. Handshakes, backslaps, first names with everyone. He was the honorary chair of the event. His name was printed in gold on the program. He had no idea that the person who controlled his company's future was already in the building. Brianna arrived alone. No entourage, no nameplate. She wore an elegant but understated black dress, small earrings, flat shoes. She carried a simple clutch. She looked like someone's guest. Maybe a teacher. Maybe a nonprofit worker. Maybe nobody at all. And that was exactly the point. The ballroom buzzed with the hum of expensive conversation. Brianna moved through it slowly, carefully, like a scientist observing a habitat. She picked up a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray and stood near the edge of the main floor. She watched. Grant Holloway held court near the center of the room. A half-circle of men in dark suits surrounded him. They laughed when he laughed. They nodded when he spoke. They leaned in like plants tilting toward sunlight. Brianna recognized the body language. She had seen it 1,000 times. The gravitational pull of money and power. Everyone orbiting the man who signed the checks. She sipped her water and waited. It took 11 minutes before someone introduced them. A mutual acquaintance, a gray-haired real estate attorney named Douglas Wilson, spotted Brianna near the appetizer table and walked over. "Brianna, I didn't expect to see you here." He smiled warmly. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people." Douglas guided her toward Grant's circle. The men parted slightly, not to welcome her, but the way a crowd shifts when someone passes too close on a sidewalk. "Grant," Douglas said, "this is Brianna Taylor. She's involved in housing development and community investment here in Charlotte." That was the introduction Brianna had asked for. Vague, understated. No mention of Apex Horizon. No mention of $4 billion. Grant turned. He looked at Brianna the way you look at a menu item you have no intention of ordering. His eyes moved from her face to her dress to her flat shoes and back again. The scan took less than 2 seconds. The judgment took even less. "Pleasure," he said. He did not mean it. He extended his hand. Not fully, just the fingers, really. The kind of handshake you give when you want the other person to know they are not worth your whole palm. Brianna took it, firm, steady. She looked him in the eye and smiled. "Wonderful to meet you, Mr. Holloway. I've heard so much about the Colton District project." Grant pulled his hand back quickly. Then, right there, in full view, he dragged his palm down the front of his jacket. Slowly, deliberately. The Italian wool made a soft, brushing sound. He turned to the man beside him, a nervous-looking executive named Philip Anderson, and muttered just loud enough for the circle to hear. "God, that's revolting. Someone sanitize where she touched. And get her out. She's contaminating the room."
Philip's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. A woman in a red gown standing 2 feet away heard it clearly. She raised her eyebrows and smirked. The man next to her, silver cufflinks, tan face, let out a short, ugly laugh. He did not even try to hide it. A young server, black, maybe 22, wearing a white shirt and black bow tie, was passing with a tray of champagne flutes.
He froze mid-step. His fingers tightened around the tray's edge until his knuckles went white. He had heard every single word. Brianna saw him. She gave a small, barely visible nod, the kind that said, "I know, I heard it too. Keep moving." The server swallowed hard. His jaw clenched. He turned away and disappeared through the kitchen doors. Brianna did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She did not let a single muscle in her face move. She stood perfectly still while the circle of suits closed around Grant again, shutting her out like a door swinging shut in her face. She stepped back, took another sip of water, and made a mental note. That was strike one. 20 minutes later, Brianna approached a second conversation group near the silent auction tables. Grant was there again, holding a glass of bourbon, ice clinking softly as he gestured. He was explaining his grand vision for the Colton district to 3 developers and a city councilwoman named Evelyn Davis. He spoke with the casual authority of a man who had never once been questioned in a room like this. His voice carried across the nearby tables. Heads turned. People listened. Brianna stood at the edge of the group and listened for a moment. Then she offered a comment. A smart one. She mentioned a mixed-income housing model that had delivered exceptional results in Atlanta, a structure that blended luxury units with affordable housing and generated stronger long-term returns than traditional developments. It was the kind of insight that would have made any serious investor pause and take notice. Grant stopped mid-sentence. He turned to her with the expression you give a child who interrupts an adult conversation at Thanksgiving dinner. "That's cute, sweetheart," he said. "But we're talking about real capital here. Billions, not little community grants and charity baskets." He paused, took a sip of bourbon, then added, louder this time, making sure the people at the next table could hear, "Maybe try the volunteer check-in table. I think they're still looking for help handing out name tags. That seems more your speed." 2 of the developers laughed. One covered his mouth with his glass. The other did not bother hiding it at all. A woman nearby leaned toward her husband and whispered something behind her hand. Her husband glanced at Brianna and shook his head slowly, like he was embarrassed on her behalf. Evelyn Davis stared at Grant with barely concealed disgust. Her grip tightened around her clutch purse, but she said nothing. Not a word. Nobody did. Brianna held Grant's gaze for 3 full seconds. She did not blink. She did not look away. She let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable for everyone except her. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Holloway," she said quietly. "More than you know." Then she turned and walked away, spine straight, head high, steps measured and unhurried. She would not give him, or anyone watching, the satisfaction of seeing her rush. Evelyn Davis caught up with her near the bar a few minutes later. She touched Brianna's elbow gently. Her face was flushed. Her voice was low. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Evelyn said. "He's been like that all night. He talks to every woman in this room like she's beneath him. But what he just did to you? That was something else entirely. That was targeted." Brianna looked at her, calm, measured, not a trace of anger on her face. "Don't be sorry, Councilwoman. Be a witness." Evelyn frowned. "A witness to what?" "You'll know soon enough." The dinner portion of the gala began at 8:15. 400 guests filtered into the main dining hall. Round tables dressed in white linen stretched across the floor. Gold-rimmed plates caught the candlelight. Fresh flowers, roses, hydrangeas, white lilies, rose from crystal vases at every table. The smell of roasted lamb and rosemary drifted from the kitchen. Brianna checked the seating chart posted near the entrance. Her name was listed at table 29, back corner, last row. The table closest to the kitchen doors, where waitstaff pushed through swinging panels every 30 seconds with a bang and a gust of hot air. She had donated $5 million. $5 million. And table 29 was where they put guests who came alone and did not seem important enough to place anywhere visible. Grant's table, table 1, sat directly in front of the stage, dead center of the room, best view, best lighting. A flower arrangement twice the size of every other table. His name was printed on a gold place card in calligraphy. A gala organizer, a young woman in a headset with a clipboard, noticed the discrepancy while reviewing the donor list. Her eyes went wide. She hurried to the event director, a tall man in a charcoal suit. "There's been a serious error," she whispered urgently. "Brianna Taylor donated $5 million. She's listed at table 29. That can't be right." The event director glanced toward Grant's personal assistant, a thin man in a too-tight vest who was fussing over place cards at table 1. The assistant overheard the conversation and waved his hand without looking up. "She's fine where she is. We're not rearranging the entire room for someone nobody has ever heard of. Leave it." The organizer opened her mouth to protest. The event director shook his head. "Don't push it." She closed her clipboard and walked away. Brianna sat at table 29. She unfolded her linen napkin and placed it on her lap. She smiled politely at the strangers around her. 2 junior bank associates who looked barely old enough to rent a car, a retired school teacher who had won her ticket in a charity raffle, and 2 empty chairs that nobody claimed. The kitchen doors banged open behind her. A wave of heat and the clatter of dishes rolled across her back. She did not turn around. She ate her salad. She listened to the keynote speaker describe the housing crisis gripping Charlotte's low-income neighborhoods. She watched from the farthest corner of the room as Grant Holloway rose from table 1 to thunderous applause when the host thanked him for his extraordinary generosity and visionary leadership in our community. The applause lasted 12 seconds. Grant stood. He waved like a senator. He placed one hand over his heart and mouthed "thank you" to the crowd. Flashbulbs lit up his face from 3 directions. A photographer knelt at the base of the stage to capture the angle. Under the table, Brianna's phone buzzed. A text from Desiree. "I'm sitting in the parking lot. Say the word and I pull the term sheet tonight. $2 billion gone before breakfast." Brianna typed back with one thumb. Her face betrayed nothing. "Not yet. I want to see how far this goes." She set the phone face down on the white tablecloth, picked up her fork, cut a small piece of lamb, chewed slowly, and waited. Because the night was far from over, and Grant Holloway, standing in his spotlight, soaking in his applause, surrounded by people who feared him and flattered him in equal measure, had absolutely no idea that the only person in this room who could save his dying empire was sitting at table 29, next to the kitchen doors, eating quietly in the dark. The dinner plates were cleared, the keynote speech ended, and the real evening began. After the formal program, the gala's top-tier donors were invited to a private lounge on the second floor of the Monarch Hotel. The Sterling Room, they called it. Velvet curtains, leather armchairs, a private bar with a bartender who knew every guest's drink by name. This was the room where the real deals happened, where handshakes meant millions, where the people who actually ran Charlotte sat in dim light and decided the city's future over single malt scotch. Brianna's $5 million donation qualified her for entry. A hostess at the door checked her name on a tablet and smiled. "Welcome, Ms. Taylor. Please enjoy yourself." Brianna stepped inside. The room smelled like cigar smoke and old leather. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. About 40 guests milled around, the inner circle. The people who had paid 6 figures just to be in this room tonight. Grant Holloway was already there. Center of the room, of course. He sat in a high-backed leather chair, like it was a throne. Bourbon in hand, legs crossed, holding court with a half-dozen men who hung on his every syllable. He saw Brianna walk in. His expression changed immediately. The easy smile dropped. His jaw tightened. He leaned toward Philip Anderson, who stood nervously beside him, holding a glass of water he had not touched. "Who keeps letting her in?" Grant said, not whispering, not even trying to be quiet. "Is she someone's plus one? A caterer who wandered off?" Philip shifted on his feet. "I think she donated, Grant. She's on the list." Grant let out a short, bitter laugh. "Donated what? $20 in a collection basket? These people always find a way to sneak in where they don't belong." He said, "these people," the way someone says, cockroaches. Casual. Practiced. Like he had said it 1,000 times before in rooms just like this one. A man in a pinstripe suit sitting across from Grant chuckled and raised his glass. "You're terrible, Grant," he said. But he was smiling when he said it. Brianna heard none of this. She was across the room, standing near the bar, ordering sparkling water with lime. But she could feel it. The energy in the room had shifted the moment she walked in. Glances darted toward her and away. Conversations dipped to murmurs, then resumed at normal volume. The air felt heavier. She knew that feeling. She had known it her whole life. 15 minutes passed. Brianna decided to make one final approach, one last test. She wanted to talk to Grant about the Charlotte housing market, a straightforward, professional topic. The kind of conversation that should be unremarkable at an event like this. She walked toward his circle. Her heels clicked softly on the hardwood floor. She held her water glass at her side. Her posture was relaxed. Her face was neutral. "Mr. Holloway," she said, "I was hoping we could talk briefly about the mixed-use development landscape in Charlotte. I've been following the Colton District project, and I'd love to hear your perspective on—" Grant held up one hand, palm out, like a traffic cop stopping a car. "Let me stop you right there," he said. The room went quiet. Not gradually. Instantly. Like someone had pressed mute on a remote control. 40 people turned to watch. Grant uncrossed his legs and leaned forward in his chair. He looked at Brianna the way a man looks at a stain on his shoe. "I don't know who you know. I don't know how you got in here. And honestly, I don't care." His voice was calm, controlled, almost bored. That made it worse. "But I am not in the mood for whatever little pitch you're about to waste my time with." He paused, let the silence hang for a moment, then continued. "There are people in this room who actually move markets, who actually build things, who actually matter." He gestured vaguely at the men around him. You're not one of them. You never will be. So do us all a favor. Go find the volunteer table, grab yourself a gift bag, and call it a night." Someone behind Brianna let out a low whistle. A woman on the leather couch to her left pressed her lips together and looked at the floor. A man near the window pulled out his phone and angled it toward the scene. The red recording light blinked on. Brianna did not move. She stood perfectly still. Her water glass did not tremble. Her eyes did not waver. She looked at Grant Holloway the way you look at a math problem you have already solved in your head. "I appreciate your time, Mr. Holloway," she said. Quiet, steady, not a crack in her voice. She turned to leave. And that was when Grant decided he had not done enough. "Hold on," he called after her. His voice was louder now, playing to the room. Brianna stopped. She did not turn around. Grant snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. "Bring me hand sanitizer, now." The waiter, a young Latino man with a thin mustache, hesitated. His eyes flickered between Grant and Brianna. He looked like he wanted to disappear. "Now," Grant repeated, harder. The waiter reached into his apron and produced a small bottle. Grant snatched it from his hand. He pumped it 3 times, loudly, theatrically, and rubbed his palms together with exaggerated thoroughness. Then he held up his hands and examined them like a surgeon prepping for an operation. "You can never be too careful," he announced to the room. "Some stains don't come off easy." The room erupted. Not with outrage, with laughter. Nervous, ugly, complicit laughter. The kind that says, "I know this is wrong, but I'm